Call the meeting to order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Renucci.
Here.
Commissioner Botani.
Here.
Commissioner Hayes.
Here.
Commissioner Leaderhouse.
Here.
And Commissioner Morath.
Here.
Is there anybody that would like to speak during citizen participation? Okay, we do not have any audience representation to speak during citizen participation, so I will close citizen participation and move on to approval of the Planning Commission minutes from November 14th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to conditional use for a new telecommunication tower located at 2485 and 2491 South 120 Highway 120, RXUP 00230A, Village of East Troy applicant, application 2022-38. And at this point, I will open the public hearing. Tim?
So in your packet is a staff report dated December 8th, 2022, and it's a staff report for two different elements, obviously related. The first is the conditional use, and then the second part is the site plan of operation for the same telecommunication tower. Let's go through this. Again, conditional uses are treated a little bit differently, so there's a lot of things to talk about before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of it. And obviously the applicant is here, they've got their application materials and they can run through those. But in terms of our process within the zoning code itself, we've got a definition for what a freestanding tower is. It's classified as a conditional use in all zoning districts. And there is also 18 development standards that are related to a telecommunication tower. And they're listed as, or they're included in the staff report. And I'll just point out a couple of these things. The first one that is of note is a tower height. So basically the bulk of the village is within the airport height restriction overlay district, and that is intended to make sure that the aircraft coming in don't hit obstacles that, might pose a hazard. So in this particular location, the airport height restriction height is roughly 100 feet. And as part of the application, the petitioner submitted an application to the FAA, and they determined that the tower height of 199 feet, the overall height, would not pose a hazard to air navigation. And as you recall, the village amended the zoning code to allow that deviation in that height restriction as long as the FAA made that formal determination. And that's been done, it's on record as being not a hazard to air navigation. Number 10 requires that when there's a new tower being constructed, it has to be designed so that it can be used by other carriers. And that also has been verified as part of the application, that the tower as designed is able to handle 2 additional telecommunication carriers. Number 11 talks about co-location, and that's required when in fact an existing structure will meet the needs of the applicant. And in this case, there is a water tower that has antennas on the same property, but that's roughly 100 feet in height. And that height does not satisfy the requirements for the county sheriff. They have to have at least 199 feet. So in that case, again, they could not co-locate on any other existing tower, and that's why they're building a brand new one at a height of 195 feet. Landscaping is required around the base of a tower, but as indicated in point number 13, the Plan Commission can defer that requirement if in fact it's not really needed because the base can't be seen. And there is a finding as part of the overall approval with regard to that. Those are the key considerations. Obviously, all these are important, and all these are important in your determination. But the ones I talked about are kind of the ones that might be front and center. Since 2017, Act 67 was imposed by the state legislature, and it treats, obviously, conditional uses differently. Essentially, there's, terms in, for example, substantial evidence. The petitioner needs to show by substantial evidence that they are complying with 18 different standards that we have identified or that have laid out in our zoning code, and that's their burden to show that, yes, in fact, they are, meeting all those as part of their application. And then if the village were inclined to impose additional conditions of approval, you can certainly do that, but then the burden shifts to the village to show why that new condition that's not otherwise in the code is necessary, and you have to show by substantial evidence that it's warranted and needed. Same thing goes for, people that might be objecting to the conditional use. They have the opportunity as part of the public hearing to provide their information. And again, you're looking for substantial evidence. And just by way of example, comments might be made at a public hearing with regard to a wetland. That might impact a conditional use one way or the other. And just using an extreme, somebody could stand up and say, well, I have a suspicion that there is a wetland on that property. And based on that, you should deny that application. So that's at one end of the spectrum of evidence. It's really not substantial because it's really not, based on anything. But if that same person said, well, as a kid, I used to work that land with my dad. As a farmer, we always get our, tractors stuck in that area because of the wetlands, springs, and whatever. That's not a study per se, but it's basically, evidence that is warranted based on personal experience, okay? The other extreme, obviously, is if a professional goes out and marks that wetland, okay? So there's different levels of information, and again, you have to kind of weigh what you determine is appropriate in terms of what is substantial and what is not. Does that kind of make sense in basically looking at comments that are being made? Going on to the top of page 4, again, the Plan Commission is holding the public hearing. You're going to be making a recommendation to the village board, which will consider the same information. And there are certain findings that have to be made as part of your approval, if that's what your intent is. And they're listed in section 510-157H, and they're listed there. And essentially, these are also incorporated into, your conditional use order that's enclosed as part of the application here. There was a public hearing notice. It was a Class 2. It was sent out to all the property owners within 300 feet. And as of the date of this staff report, we had not received any written comments. Earlier today, we received 2 written comments, and they were handed out before the meeting here, and you have those, and they will be read into the public record. There is a draft conditional use order that's incorporated as part of the packet, and obviously it's something that's in draft form, and it would be based on the public hearing and any findings that you deem would be appropriate. With that, I'll just pause to see if there's any comments, questions about the material that I presented, after which then the petitioner would come up and basically present their application and talk about their compliance with all the standards and requirements.
Has everybody been, or had the opportunity to read the letters yet, personally? You've been all presented those letters. The two properties are within 700 feet of the tower location, so it's even outside the 300 feet they were required to list, but they did send in the letters. One of the persons, just so everybody knows, is Joe Klarkowski. That's one of the homes. He was a leader within the municipality of town of East Troy, one of the island properties that exists within the village. And he has been very clear in this whole process through ICC meetings and everything else about this tower and the need for its safety and health. We as a village board have done our due diligence with purchasing radios, communications to be utilized not only for our police department, but also for our DPW to connect with this tower. So I just want to make sure everybody's very clear of the extent that we've gone thus far. But we definitely need to make sure we take into consideration these letters. But these are coming from people that have known about this and have been in meetings for a number of years now over this tower being created and this entire communication system throughout the entire county being a part of our health and safety for every one of our constituents. Just want to make sure everybody knows that.
So does John have a copy of the letters?
No, but I heard what you said.
I think it would be appropriate to read them into the record.
Okay, the first letter that we received is from Joseph Klarkowski of North 7701 State Road 120. I will not be able to attend the reference public hearing since the Town of East Troy's December board meeting falls on the same date and time. I hereby request that this letter be read and entered into the record. I'm totally aware of the countywide communications improvement project and have no objection to the needed project. I am objecting to the findings of impact. The findings are incorrect without the applicant provided substantial evidence that the tower does not result in substantial and undue adverse impact on my property. Both the village staff report and the village conditional use order make the same false statement. I am hereby requesting the substantial evidence that this radio tower will not be detrimental to our health or property value. The new tower will be the overpowering feature of our residential property. It is hard to hide a 200-foot tall structure. The new tower will be 620 feet from my bedroom. National studies have shown an 8% to 20% reduction in property values within a quarter mile of a communication tower. This evidence may not have been required when the cell tower was constructed on this property, or the additional providers that upgraded equipment work was accomplished on several occasions. But I believe that with the passing of the 2017 Wisconsin Act 67, the applicant must provide the substantial evidence that we will not be harmed by this project. With the receipt of this evidence, the objection will be withdrawn. Sincerely, Joseph S. Klarkowski. The second letter was received this afternoon from Kenneth C. Hansen, North 7691 State Road 120. Dear Mr. Seeger and fellow Planning Commission members, I must apologize for my inability to make this Planning Commission meeting. Unfortunately, I have a prior engagement that I was unable to reschedule. I humbly request that you read this letter into the record regarding the new proposed communications tower. Let me start off by saying that I understand that this project is designed to improve Walworth County emergency services and public safety. I am not objecting to the need of a tower in the East Troy area to help increase public safety. I am, however, objecting to the findings that there is no substantial or adverse impact to nearby properties. For me, the potential ill effects to the health and well-being of my 8-year-old son is of the utmost importance. This tower will be approximately 700 feet from my living area, and studies in Australia and Germany, along with numerous other studies around the world, have shown children living within 1,300 feet of a RF tower develop cancer at 3 times the rate of children living several miles away. The World Health Organization classified cell tower radiation as a Class 2B possible carcinogen. 5G networks have been around for less than 5 years, so there are no studies on the long-term effects of exposure to children or adults of these radio waves. There will also be a negative effect on my property value and the ability to sell my home in the future. This tower will stand nearly 200 feet tall, will be a large and predominant feature of nearby properties, and will forever negatively change the landscape of the entire area. In one study, 79% of potential home buyers said they would not purchase a house near a cell tower, and 94% said it would negatively impact interest they may have in purchasing a home. Other studies have also shown a 7.6% to over 20% decrease in property values for houses in or near proximity, parentheses, less than 1,500 feet, of a tower. The truth of the matter is most people looking at similar houses and price, if one had a large 200-foot tall radio tower in close proximity, they would choose the house free of the possible health risks or unsightly look a large tower poses, or they will request for a significant discount. In closing, I believe that under current Wisconsin law, the applicant needs to supply overwhelming substantial evidence that this new tower will not cause physical harm or any potential health issues to the residents living in close proximity. The project must also not cause financial harm to those properties near the project as well. Upon receipt of this evidence or plan to mitigate the impact, I would remove my objection. Thank you for your time and consideration of my concerns. Sincerely, Kenneth C. Hansen.
Yes, you guys want to come on up? Come right to the podium, push the button.
Good evening. I appreciate, certainly, I appreciate the concerned citizens' comments. I would like to clarify, though, that my name is Captain Todd Newman from the Sheriff's Office. This is not a cellular tower that we are putting up. This is a public safety radio tower, and that's where the difference lies. So the frequencies will be different, the RF will be different, the purpose of the tower is different than what's up there. I'd also like to clarify that there already is a cellular tower on that property that's been there for some time. However, I would ask for copies of those letters. I would ask that you allow me to bring this back before you in January with the opportunity to have looked into their concerns.
So Tim, would that be something that we would table, or they would ask for different verbiage for that?
So that might be the end result, but I think it would be appropriate to go through the rest of the application and talk about location and, you know, tower height and those kinds of things so that we can kind of get that out of the way.
Sure.
Okay.
So are you looking for a presentation from me then?
Yes,
Okay.
if you can do that. So your application is part of their packet.
Certainly.
So if you could just, you know, run through the high points.
Sure. This is a application for a countywide communications tower. Back in 2015, the Sheriff's Office initiated a radio study as our current systems are outdated and dating back to the 80s. We have a system that is not interoperable between all services within Walworth County. In fact, the village services up here in the northeast part of the county are isolated to their own channels, just simply due to coverage problems. The current countywide system does not work up here in the village, and as a result, we have a capacity issue and we have an interoperability issue. And so, as part of the project, we need to install 11 towers across the county. These towers will be interconnected by microwave, and they will allow all emergency services and DPW within the county to interoperate and communicate across the county. It's a simulcasted system. That means I can talk from one end of the county to the other, as will the village services be able to do the same. To do that, we have to put a 199-foot tower here in the village. And back in the early part of the year, we looked at the village's water tower, but there were some serious structural concerns as to whether that tower would be suitable location. And so we looked at the water tank site out on Highway 120, and we found that to be a much more desirable location. Both from the fact that we wouldn't have to try to put up a tower in the center of the village, and this was on property the village already owned, and we could work out an agreement that was mutually beneficial to both the county and the village, that was cost-free to the village and cost-free to the county in terms of leasing the space from the village. So the tower design that you see in front of you is 199 feet. It's going to contain 3 two-way radio antennas, 2 in the 700 megahertz frequency range and 1 in the UHF frequency range. And then it will also contain 2 microwave dishes that are going to beam the signal between the towers so that the towers remain interconnected. I'm sorry, I'm at a little bit of a loss hearing some of the letters, so I'm looking for any other information you'd like me to explain. Correct. The current cellular tower just is not high enough to provide us with the signal coverage that we need up into the northeast part of the county and out towards Troy Center and into Alpine Valley and areas south. It has to be designed at that height so that we get the signal coverage that we need out into those areas outside of the village. To use a lower tower in that area is going to cause us to probably have to look at putting a 12th tower in at significant additional cost. The tower itself is designed to be self-supporting so that we don't have any guy wires. It's also designed to be, if it were to fall, it's designed to fall within a 100-foot radius, making sure that we don't damage any of the adjacent structures. The towers themselves are designed to crumple and fold down in and of themselves. At the base of the tower is an equipment shelter and a propane tank to supply the generator that's going to be at the base of the tower in the event of a power failure or if we would have to turn off natural gas due to a disaster. That's all I really have to explain. What other questions can I answer?
Just real quickly, the fencing around the compound?
The fencing will be 8 feet in height, and it'll be secure and designed to keep people out.
As I mentioned as part of my overview, I mentioned that the tower is designed to accommodate 2 additional carriers.
It is. Okay. Yep. It is designed, and it is designed to meet all your requirements.
So first of all, I want to thank you for your service. You know, we love you guys. So is this, you said you needed 11 towers or 10?
We have 11 towers sited throughout the county, from anywhere from the nearest 2 to this location are going to be one out in the town of LaGrange, roughly in the area of 1220 and 67, and the next one to the south is in the area of Highway 120 and Highway 11.
So, okay. Is this the first one you're going to build, or are the other ones built already? And are they the same size as this one?
They are all approximately this size. Some of them are actually a lot taller. Because this sits on a high piece of ground, we were able to keep this one under 200 feet. Our main tower at the center of the county in Elkhorn at the government center and the sheriff's office is almost 300 feet. Most of them are around 270 feet. So these are all being sited and permitted right around the same time. We're hoping to start construction in the spring.
So if we put it at Alpine Valley, we could make a 10-foot tower there?
The problem that I'm concerned with Alpine Valley is I'm not sure that I would get coverage in the village that I need. because there's some, just the way that that topography works, I'm concerned that the village would remain in the hole that it is in now.
That's right. That's right.
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
I've got some other questions, but not for the sheriff's department. I mean, it just about the proposal in general.
This is John Morath. I got a question, if possible.
Go ahead, John.
Tim, excuse me. John Morath, I got a question, if possible. The Alpine Valley part of it, I know down in the hollow, East Troy cannot get down there where they're, with the towers that we have in the village itself. I know this from years back. I recommend that this does go through. Also, is this going to be set up with the state patrol and all those, their cars also to go through this as a boot?
So the State Patrol has a separate tower located just behind Alpine Valley, which unfortunately would not benefit this particular tower location. It might benefit other parts of the county, but we do have plans to interconnect with the WISCOM system that the State Patrol currently operates on. So we would have mutual aid interconnectivity with the State Patrol.
Would this also eventually go through statewide? Like, say, if there was a Mavis call?
This tower is actually going to be the site of one of our Mavis simulcast sites. I'm going to have 4 towers, Whitewater Lake, East Troy, Lake Geneva, and the X and K tower that will simulcast Mavis. And it will eventually interconnect with state systems and other systems that provide mutual aid. So it won't be part of it won't be a statewide coverage, but it will have the ability to interconnect with those systems that do have statewide coverage.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you very much.
Tim, you have more to say? Go ahead.
Just a quick question for me. What is Mavis?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mavis is the mutual aid box alarm system. Every fire department within Walworth County, within northeast Illinois and southeast Wisconsin, and really statewide throughout Wisconsin and Illinois is part of this system. It's a large pre-planned mutual aid system that when we have a large-scale fire, departments are typically requesting a Mavis box. If Chief DeGaro were here tonight, he would tell you that he uses that system extensively.
I remember that fire down by that big propane tank down south some years back. That was quite a big one.
Yeah, that was actually pre-Mavis. We didn't have those systems in place yet.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? No? 40?
Okay, first question I wrote down is, and I didn't see anything, but I'm sure there is, but I had to ask anyway. Are there gonna, because of the location, is there gonna be a red beacon on this tower?
No, this one's actually under 200 feet, so we will not have to light this tower.
Well, I guess the only reason I'm asking is because we've got a red beacon on our water tower, and that's under 200 feet too. But I just, being that it's up on an elevated area, I just felt that, in my opinion, it would have been safer to have a red beacon on the top, but that's fine. I'm not an expert. I just saw the question. I thought I'd ask. Let me see what else is there. I guess the question is now, the county has to provide 2 other spaces on this tower?
Yes, as part of your ordinance, we have to be able to support 2 other carriers.
Okay, so would that be cell phone companies?
Potentially, yes. However, you could also have the state decide that they would want to install their new WISCOM system on that tower, or you could have Waukesha County decide that they wanted to locate a tower site within our county.
Or the village could put its own communication set up on there?
You could. However, I want to stress that as part of the larger trunk system, we can support the village.
Right.
The other item I had on page 3 and 14 lease agreement, I didn't see a length of the lease agreement. Is there a length of that, or?
I think we'd be looking for probably 10 to 15 years from the village. The projected life of the system before we would do anything substantial with it is 10 years, and by then, technology may have changed. So we would work out an agreement that at that point, we would either extend the intergovernmental agreement with you to continue using that tower site, or we would take it down, or we would turn it over to the village for their use, depending on what the situation is at that point. And that's, the options I'm naming are options that we've addressed with other communities within the county that we've worked out similar intergovernmental agreements with.
So just to clarify, you're talking about the tower life is 10 years or what?
The anticipated life of the radio system, the tower itself will last much longer than that. The radio system, though, is an anticipated life of 10 years before we would refresh it or modify it or upgrade it. And we don't know what technology is going to look like in 10 years, so it's a little bit hard to say exactly what we would do within 10 years.
With that item that was stated just now, as far as as far as for the agreement itself, or I'm sorry, it's, yeah, the order of granting conditional use on ongoing conditions of approval, letter D, it says the plan commission may unilaterally amend an approved site plan of operation by revising existing provisions or adding new provisions. Such amendment shall be limited in scope to address negative impacts the use is having on surrounding properties and/or public health, safety, and welfare.
So 40, that's a little bit of what Tim had reiterated earlier in the Act 67 verbiage. Am I right on that, Tim?
So this particular provision that he's talking about is talking about the site plan and plan of operation, not the conditional use itself. So once the conditional use is approved, you know, I mean, that can't be taken away unless, you know, there's something extraordinary. But this is talking about if there's some configuration of the property or use of the property, how it's actually being used that's causing, you know, traffic or some kind of other unanticipated impact, that could be addressed. But not to say, you know, you can't do the use anymore.
I don't have any other questions. Sorry, I just wanted, I still think it would be a good idea to put a red beacon on it, but I'm in a minority and I understand, but I just wanted to say that.
It's not that close to the airport, 40.
I know, John, but the thing is that I'm thinking if you get a really foggy night and somebody's coming in and they know that the airport is right near the freeway and so is this tower, you never know. Because I've seen a lot of cell towers going down 120 towards Lake Geneva, they all got strobes on top of them.
And they're all higher than this one is.
I would not be opposed to putting a red beacon if that's what we had to do. No.
I just want to make sure that I said it, that's all.
So I guess the point is to follow FAA requirements. If they would require it, then you would do it. I don't think the village is asking for it. Okay. So before, you know, we kind of conclude this part of the public hearing, though, just want to talk about a couple things. In the zoning code, it allows the zoning administrator to, you know, hire a third-party entity if there's any question about, you know, what's being submitted for the tower height or co-location. And I'm totally satisfied with what they've said tonight as part of their application, that there's clear evidence that, you know, that's not necessary. So I just want to get that on the record. The other thing is, you know, we had talked about the landscaping requirement. Again, it's a requirement, but you can waive it. And, maybe we can just have a short discussion about that. Obviously, it's within a forested area, wooded area. You couldn't even see the compound from, any public street. And so the question is, do you think it's necessary to have landscaping or not?
Yeah, I don't think that should be part of the requirement, not within the location where this is being proposed.
And I think the other thing that we could do is just kind of walk through the conditional use order, so that if there's any other, comments, questions, or issues that you might think would be appropriate, so that the petitioner can come back with some additional information. I think that would be helpful. And again, this follows the standard conditional use order format. There's recitals up front, and then on the bottom of the first page, again, this is part of your packet. The last recital, whereas the Plan Commission in passing on the matter has made the following determinations. And again, these come out of the zoning code. And there's 1 through 6. And again, you have to make some sort of determination based on, the materials that have been submitted, both by the petitioner and by others, whether in fact there's, undue hardship, or undue impact on neighboring property. So, I'm not sure if anything of these kind of stood out to you as being, something that needs more clarification on the petitioner's part or not. So.
Tim, I didn't find anything in there that, of the 6 items, that would be of concern. It doesn't look like any of the other commissioners have concern either.
I do have one suggestion I'd like to make if possible. Todd, I would like to see it that the tower has no cell phone towers on it, or on it. You had a good idea about Waukesha County putting one of their repeats on it, and the other one for the state patrol or the state board. I think that would be a good idea.
I can't speak to that actually happening. The third party would have to approach us and want to put those items on there. The village could issue the conditional use permit with the condition that we not put any cellular carriers on it if that's a concern. However, your ordinance calls for me to be capable of supporting them. So that would be a decision that I would defer to the village on.
Thank you.
To basically require co-location capability, but then say, well, no? I don't think so.
Yeah, John, I think that gets a little thick as far as the legal aspect of it. It's
Okay.
intended to just support whoever needs to cohabitate on that tower, not by way of who we decide to be on there. That's kind of how our ordinance is already written. We'd have to change the ordinance.
Okay, it was just my 2 cents.
So, Tim, do you have, it's going to be a crazy question, and I wish Jason was here because he could probably answer it, but any idea how tall our water tower is right now? It's 190 feet? So,
No, I'm sorry, it's 190,000.
I think it's right at 100 feet.
so in perspective, when everybody's looking at this description on a piece of paper in front of you or on your computer, at 200 feet, you're pretty much talking about double the height of what the tower is, just to give everybody that perspective. I should be able to see it from my house.
Yep, especially if there's a light on it.
They keep me up at night.
Could I offer some other information? The county's current tower, the current radio tower, is located in the center of Elkhorn. It's been located there since the 1980s. I'm not aware of any adverse property values in the immediate area of that tower. and I'm not aware of any ill health effects directly due to that tower. That's not to say that that's not the case, but I'm not aware of anything, and we have not had an issue with property values that I'm aware of due to that public safety tower being right in the center of Elkhorn.
So next steps here, Tim, we're looking to,
So you've received two letters from, neighbors within the area, objecting to, the finding that there's not going to be a adverse impact to their property and there's concerns about health. I would note that, obviously they are making statements, referring to studies, what study, when was it done, what were the parameters? Is it even a one-to-one comparison? It's, I wish they were here to present more information with regard to their claims. They talk about numbers, they talk about one study. Again, where was that study? When was it done? What were the circumstances? The World Health Organization, so on and so forth. What study is that? They basically make claims. But again, they need to provide some additional information. And obviously, you heard their concerns and, being able to table or adjourn the meeting to next month will allow both parties, so to speak, to provide some more information on that particular issue. And I think there's, a lot of evidence, I don't want to say both ways, but, there's more information that can be shared.
I'd make a motion then to adjourn the public hearing to the next planning commission meeting in January.
That would be January, what's the date?
That is January 9th.
At 6:30.
Yes, we'll adjourn this to January 9th at 6:30.
Is it possible to get copies of those letters so that we may have our experts address these issues?
There's
Yes.
plenty of them floating around.
We'll make sure that we
so.
get you copies.
There you go.
I need a second for that motion, if anybody wants to.
I'll second.
Any other discussion on the item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're going to skip right into discussions about the, let me get to my page here, sorry. All right, discussion regarding potential amendment to zoning code with regard to exterior materials for accessory buildings and exceptions. So this comes to us for a particular reason. We've got a couple of buildings within the community and our industrial facilities that have utilized soft-covered structures. And one was just recently installed in a very non-visible location, but is something that we need to maybe address as far as how we go forward with this, what provisions we want to make, if we want to make some amendments that identify that maybe these uses are okay. And then if they're not in the public right-of-way, that they can maybe be an exception to the rule. And we have to make a decision on whether we want to do that or not. One of them was the old glass manufacturing company. We had those storage facilities with the tarp-style materials over the top of them for those the weather-covered bins. What was the other one that I was thinking of? There's another one at the pier location. Right now, they've got a cloth-styled structure sitting there. And there's one that was just recently installed at the McPherson property right down in that hole where they have their property kind of behind Laubers. So we need to discuss what we want to do, if anything, about that. It's not allowed at this point within our code, but we could modify that. Am I right on that, Tim? Any questions?
I'd be okay with modifying code to allow, but it would have to be on a case-by-case basis, reviewed by this board. But exceptions can be made as long as it meets the criteria and it's out of public view. Or if it is in public view, there's modifications to hide it. landscaping.
Excuse me, in regards to the glass recycling company that was on the site on Buell Drive, the village board actually some time ago, excuse me, had conversations with the company because residents were complaining about noise when their operations at night. And one of the solutions was to cover those. And also the solution helped is keep the weather out of them also. And that's the one reason why those were put in.
And that's fine, thank you for the background on that, but I'm just identifying that there are structures that exist in this village outside of a singular event that happened recently with one being installed. Tim, do you want to bring something back to us that we can maybe discuss further about an amendment that would be on a case-by-case basis? That would identify something that is in the realm of out-of-sight kind of thing or screened to some degree as an initial requirement?
Would you want it to be to specific zoning districts? Would that be an option, Tim, or? I mean, do we want to keep it industrial zone properties? Do we want to allow this for residential? So I think that's something else the commission should consider, whether you want it to be allowed in every zoning district or if it should be specific.
And to that point, I think that, we definitely do have a number of those structures in residential situations, usually for seasonal storage of somebody's boat or something like that. I know it may not be part of our code, but we would have much more than 3 identifying structures that already exist in our community that are of that nature, that soft-sided material.
Harbor Freight sells those frames that look, the rounded ones with the tarp cover or with a silver or whatever they are, that, instant garage type thing if you need it.
I think we'd want to begin on the industrial side of it and kind of leave the residential alone for right now. I don't think we need to bring that into play until it becomes a problem.
I agree. Is that enough information?
Yes, but I'm sure we'll have to go through, any number of drafts to get to the point where it reads the way you want. I mean, at this point, I understand the basic issue, and I'll take my best stab at it, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. Any recommendations for future agendas? Anyone have anything pressing? No? Our next meeting is going to be January 9th at 6:30. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thanks, John.
Bye.